lives within our community to unlock meaningful career outcomes that align with their personal and professional priorities through our marketplace. And so we're happy to have our return to work experts, Susan and Kelly, are prepared to launch you today to provide practical tips to help you level up your resume after a long career break. Personal and professional priorities through our marketplace. So Susan, Kelly, take it away.
You will.
Great.
We're getting a little feedback.
Yeah, we're going to just start with a screen share here.
So I am Susan on, like I said, be on your right, Kelly's over here. And our company, Prepare to Launch You, is a learning company that guides women through challenging work-life transitions. And we both know there's probably no more challenging transition than going back to work after raising kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, it's something that we have experienced ourselves, but it's also something that we are extremely passionate about, very much aligned with the Mom Project mission. For sure. Yeah. We know it, we've lived it, we understand it, and we have helped thousands of women now return to work successfully. And this is our topic of all topics.
This is one of our favorite topics.
Yeah.
So we're going to move ahead. We'll just say a little bit about us. And some of you I know have met us before, but just for those who haven't, we are both moms of 4.
Yes, we were just discussing that before we hopped on with all of you. Lots of stories to tell when you're moms of 4. We've both taken career breaks and opted back into work.
That's right. And we've combined 30, we're probably even 32 maybe, years of experience helping other women do the same.
Right. The work we did during our gap years was an asset to our brands.
And today we're going to make sure that you guys feel the same way.
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely.
So a few objectives for today's class. First, we're going to help you determine if you're ready to write your resume. And this is important because it's really easy. We see this a lot with our students. I'm ready to go back to work. I'm going to write my resume, starting with the resume. Right. Well, we're going to make sure you're ready. If after we go through that specific slide, you realize, heck, I'm really not ready to write my resume yet, please stay on this webinar because the information you get will be of great value when you are ready.
Right. Right. We're going to share 3 essential truths about resumes with career gaps. And there are some essential truths. These are the top 3.
Right. And I think they're kind of going to help you get some clarity because there's a lot of noise out there about what's right, what's wrong. We're going to give you permission to count and to pitch the work that you do or did during your career break.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. And then we're going to teach you 3 unique strategies for presenting that work in the most compelling way on your resume.
Because it's really a lot in the delivery.
Right, right. So let's just discuss, are you ready to write your resume? So there are 3 essential questions you need to ask yourself to determine if you are ready to actually sit down and write your resume. Very important questions. And the first one is, do you know your brand? So talk about that.
Yeah, your brand is the assets that you bring to the workplace. So it's your skills, some hard skills, some soft skills, it's your experiences, it's your aptitudes, your talents, your strengths, the things that you're called on to do. And often we're really clear on those, the brand that we might have had 5, 10, 15 years ago when we were working in a traditional sense, but we may not know what they are now. So it's important.
Right. The next question is, do you know your audience?
Yeah. And the audience is who you're talking to.
Yeah.
So you may have started your career out in accounting. And for the last 10 years, you've been volunteering, doing other things. Maybe you've gotten some licensure in HR and you want to make a pivot. If you are thinking about your audience, you'll make sure that you write that resume for them. But if you're not thinking specifically, if you haven't identified who it is you want to work for, I don't mean by name, but in general, then you can't create a resume that's going to be compelling. It's going to sound more like, stop me when you hear something you like. Right. And that doesn't work.
Which is a death trap. In the resume world is a death trap. Stop me when you hear something you like. And then the last one is, do you know your story? So elaborate on what that even means.
Yeah,
we like to say this.
I know.
Tell your story. Know your story. Yeah, let's discuss what that is.
Well, I was born in it's not that kind of story. So I think the thing that we usually say is connecting the dots.
Yes.
You are here today because you do not have a conventional resume. A conventional resume is very easy to follow. It might be 2 or 3 employers doing progressively more challenging work within the same lane with no gap, no pivot, no change. You don't have that. That's why you're here. Right. So when you said before the stop me when you hear something you like, resume is the death trap, that's because a typical resume gets about a 6 to 8 second read. Right. So in that 6 to 8 seconds, I, as the hiring manager, need to understand what you're talking about. Right. So if it shows me accounting, then PTO leadership, and then, a project doing a marketing campaign. And then those dots aren't clear enough for me to understand it in 68 seconds.
Right.
So in that short period of time, you need to be able to connect those dots and tell the story in a way that captures my attention right at the top of the resume.
Right. So if you want to take a screenshot of this, or if you want to come back to this after and watch the recording, this is where you need to start. You need to be able to answer these questions before you even begin to sit down and write your resume. So there are 3 essential truths about resume gaps, and we want to give you those truths right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the first one is they are definitely not a deal breaker.
Yes.
You will get hired. And let's talk about that. We were telling Jennifer a story because she's in Detroit. One of our favorite students who came to us through the Mom Project is a woman named Verna, who had gotten her start at GM. She's an engineer, automotive engineer, and she took a 24-year career break.
So 24 years. Just think about that. 24 years.
Right. Some of you are probably about that age. So during that time, she did some interesting things. She did a couple of seasonal jobs at H&R Block, helping an accountant, do some prep. She got a job on a manufacturing floor one Christmas just to make some extra money. But not a whole lot. Lots of volunteer stuff too.
Lots of volunteer
But she
work.
followed our strategy, and she just landed a job at Waymo, which is the Google electric car company, with a 24-year resume gap. So they are not a deal breaker, but they have to be filled. And Verna used our strategy to fill it in a way so that it didn't look like she hadn't worked in 24 years, nor did it look like she had was a CEO mom for 24 years, because that doesn't count either.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Or it doesn't cut it.
Let's talk, because what we know as experts now is that there is a difference between a short gap and a long gap. So let's just talk about that.
Okay. Well, first of all, they both have to be accounted for on the resume.
Yes.
You won't get through a human or ATS or a hiring manager if your resume starts even in 2018 or 19. There has to be something there. So right now we're in this unique position as a country, as a world, that we've had this pandemic, and everybody knows that, pick your number, somewhere around 2.5 million women left the workforce here in the US. So if you took a COVID break, it is perfectly acceptable to say that 2020 to present took a COVID career break. You could say something like, very simple. It requires no other explanation. That doesn't work though if you've taken more time off, like putting down, I took a mom break, I was a career caregiver. It doesn't really work if you've been out for, say, 3 or 5 at the very most. You have anything beyond that, you've got to give me something explanation of what you've done. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later.
And you've done a lot.
And
if you're sitting there right now saying, well, I haven't done anything. Yes, you have. We will help you figure out.
We'll give you a couple of examples of people who, like, I'm thinking Roseanne, who said, I didn't do anything.
I didn't do anything. Yeah, she did. Right. Oh yeah, she did. Yeah. You did a lot.
That's right.
Okay. And go ahead. This is your line.
This is my line. I know. Work is work, paid or unpaid. I think if nothing else, we just want to tell you. So in our combined experience, we've worked over 30 years. My prior experience before meeting Kelly and starting this company was as a recruiter. I worked with companies who were placing women who'd returned from career gaps. So I kind of did what the Mom Project did, but on a smaller scale in the New York, Connecticut area. And I did it all live. This is job boards. And
algorithms.
Yeah, right. It was actually kind of simple and fun, but definitely not nearly to the scale of the success as the Mom Project. But what I can tell you with great authority is that if you present it well, the employer is not going to care if you were paid or not. We see we see it every day. Yeah. Every day we get at least one email from our students saying, look at the job I just got.
Yes. And we want to just take a minute here because we know that employers value those gap years and what you have done. And that's important, but it has to start with you. You have to believe it yourself. And we want to give you permission and take it on good authority. We do this with women all the time.
All we do.
Yes, it's all we do. We do this all the time. And we know that this is work that is valuable. It makes sense when you connect the dots and use the strategies that we're going to go over here today. But it has to start with you. You have to believe that work that you have done is valuable work. And we're going to show you how to translate.
And we're giving you permission right now. Oops, there was one other thing.
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, back.
All right. Because the key here is that you've got to present it right.
Right.
because those skills, those experiences that were unpaid are valuable. They are an asset, not a liability. There is no, I'm sorry for taking, let's just make one other thing clear that we can put this down, but this is something we really believe.
Okay, well,
we believe a lot. We have, yeah, we do. But we have a country right now where the population is declining. We don't survive as a country, as a species, if women aren't having kids. Let's just face it, folks.
Right.
You should never apologize for having a child.
No.
We need your child. Little Ari is going to be our next neurosurgeon. That's Jennifer's daughter. But really, I mean, we need it. So, and I'm not being kitschy here or, cutesy. It's a fact.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying we don't want you to go in and say, well, I was a mom and you should be grateful that I'm a mom because my kid might be your brain surgeon. But we do want you to go in there with the confidence of believing that what you did was important, even if it was strictly changing diapers and buying groceries. That is valuable because you are helping us survive, right? So go in with the very least, if you can't dig any other confidence up, just dig deep and find that confidence that says, what I'm doing is essential and I'm not going to apologize for it.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And you are often the backbones of the communities. You allow for other moms that, are off building their careers. You are home, allowing them to be able to go off and do that because you are running our booster clubs. You are running our PTOs. You are running our boards of education and our communities and our churches and all of that. So that work is valuable and it starts with you. So you need to see it that way. Okay. Pep talk over. We're moving on.
Now we're going to start into the strategy. So
So strategy one.
Right. Strategy one.
We need you to give yourself credit. So we just kind of sold that. We hard sold you on that. So
we'll give you some
take
details.
it away. Yeah.
So what's really important now is to start with a clean slate, and whether it's a notebook or your Word doc, you're just going to start with the volunteer roles you've taken on over the years. You don't want to be too discerning immediately. You want to get everything down, but you're going to dig deeper on the roles that align with what you want to do. So sticking with the example of finance, if you have a finance and accounting background and you think, I really love working with numbers, I want to continue doing that. When you start pitching on your resume some of the experiences you had, you're going to spend a little less time talking about the fact that you coached soccer or you did book organizing in the library, and more time talking about your role as the treasurer of the PTO or the bookkeeper for the hockey club, whatever it is. So you want to align those experiences with the work you want to do.
The work that you're targeting.
Yeah.
So you're going to list the pro bono work that you've done. And actually, we didn't say this to begin with. You're going to want to have out, a sheet of paper when you do this exercise. Did you say that?
I did.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay.
That's all right.
All right. Sorry. Anyway.
We do this a lot.
Okay.
So
you're going to list
pro
that
bono.
pro bono work. Yeah.
So we were just talking about Alina. We have a student right now who had worked in high fashion, like general manager of like big fashion houses. And she's been home for about 5 years. She also came from the Mom Project. And she said, I want to pivot into HR.
Right.
So she got her SHRM certificate during COVID, but she has no HR experience, or so she said.
Right.
She has some peripheral experience because as a general manager, you are doing a lot of that work. So as we're going through the course, we're kind of talking to her about what she does. And she says something about doing exit interviews. And I said, tell me about that. She said, well, my husband owns 3 med spas in Southern California. And I do that. I said, well, why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you do? Well, what did we find out? She wrote his HR manual. She does all of his resume screening. She does all of his first interviews. She does all of the background checks. She does the exit interviews. She wrote the training manual. She wrote the compliance manual. She is his HR department. But because he owned the business, and they're doing it over the dishes or in bed at night or whatever, it's not official. She wasn't giving her credit. Well, let me tell you something. Her resume now says is chief HR officer for X Med Spa, a 3 location with X $1 million in sales, and boom, 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 boom. This is what I did.
Right.
So we want you to give credit. Now, you may not have had as big a role as Alina.
No.
But let's say that you have Randy. Randy calls you up and says, Kelly, I need some help reviewing these resumes.
Right.
Can you give me some help? Even though Randy's her best friend, she's using Kelly's authority and professionalism to get some work done. That counts.
Right.
You don't have to say, I did work for my best friend and I wasn't paid, so it doesn't really count. No, you did the work. That's all you say.
Absolutely.
Another example is just if it's casual coaching or like a one-off gig.
Yeah.
Maybe every year your sister's company is a newsletter and you write it.
Well, Verna was a good example of this.
Yeah.
She did some gig work, and it could be one day. It could be a half a day's worth of work.
Right.
But whatever it was valuable, and you need to see it.
Even if it wasn't paid. Now you may have had some paid work too, right?
Yep.
That's the third bullet.
The third one. Yep. So that's that gig or part-time work that you've done. Yeah.
So like the one-off project. So we had one student who came through, and she'd been out for maybe 14 years, but every year since she left her company, she did their trade show every week because they loved the way she did it. And for her, it was a nice week off in Vegas and a hotel room by herself. That was payment enough, but that was something that belonged on her resume. She didn't say, I only do this once a year for 3 days. She just said, trade show manager, name of company, 2007 to present.
Right.
Okay. You do not, and this is the other thing we talk about all the time, women way overshare. So too many apologies and way oversharing. You are going to present the case that makes you the best candidate. And that is the one that just says, I ran trade shows for this company for the last 14 years.
Exactly.
We had another student, remember Lindsay? She used to barter.
Yes.
So Lindsay was a marketing person and she bartered because she loved going to shows, but she was a single mom and didn't have a lot of money to do that. So she bartered with some of the theater and music venues around her home. And she would do their brochures, she would do digital campaigns, and her payment was tickets to whatever she wanted.
Yeah.
So that counts.
Yeah.
And even like a lot of us will take a retail job or a paraprofessional job in the school system because it works with our schedules. Think about the experiences that you have there that might correlate with what you want to do. So let's say you want to get into, let's say we're HR now, we're in HR and you're a paraprofessional in the school, but maybe one of your jobs is to organize what are those meetings called when you have the special ed kids?
PPT,
EEO. I know it in 3 letters, the PPTs, but that's like an HR role. You're bringing people together. You're expressing maybe difficult news. You're trying to get consensus. So that would be something you'd highlight more than you might highlight tutoring someone on math skills. Right. And that leads us to that final bullet.
Right. And so you're going to mine. So you have all of those things listed out. You're going to list out all of those experiences. We've given you plenty of examples, but really even just talking to people around you and saying, what are some of the things that I've done that maybe I didn't see as work, but really is valuable.
Right.
So you're going to get all of that down, and then you're going to mine you're going to mine them for the common themes that matter to your audience that you're writing to, that audience that you've defined, that work that you're targeting. Okay. All right. So strategy 2 is to consider your language. So you're going to keep it serious. No CEO mom or domestic engineer.
It's just a little too cutesy.
Like tongue in cheek.
It's just not professional enough, but you're going to make it professional. So here are a couple of tricks. A lot of you're
really going to want to listen to these.
Yeah, a lot of you will have experience in school systems. And the first time I saw it was somebody who came from a town near us, and the elementary school is called Tooten Hills Elementary School because it's near where a train used to go by. And I mean, nothing.
It's sweet for an elementary school.
But it just completely, I think, undermines the experience when you have that kind of cutesy name. So, for example, instead of saying Farmer Joe Elementary School PTO president, you'd say PTO president for the Fairfield Public Schools. Instantly, it has much better cachet. You want to elaborate on what you did and how you did it, the same way you would in a good resume for your professional work experience. So think about what you did and how you did it. So if you were in charge of fundraising, talk not just, I'm led fundraising, tell me how you did it. Tell me what strategies you used. Tell me about the tactics that you used.
Right. So can you give just like some examples of language? I think that's always really important.
Yes. Right. So we get into it a little bit on the next slide, but so if you're talking about raising money through doing events, you want to call that development or fundraising. If you were set up the Facebook page, or you were writing a newsletter for them, you could call that digital communications or social media marketing. The thing that helps the most here, we kind of highlighted it when you know your audience, is what language they speak.
Right.
So you can use that language to reflect what you did. One of the questions we got talked about about titles.
Right.
When you're a volunteer and you're not getting paid, you can call yourself whatever the heck you want. No one's going to argue of what you were. So we had Melanie ran into this, another Mom Project student who came to us from Chicago. She was writing, she kind of created the whole communications plan for her church, but she didn't really have a title. She was like, she wrote the newsletter, designed the logo. And I said, no. The least you can get out of this, because she was spending about 15 hours a week on it, is to get a great title. Right. So we called her the communications director, communications consultant for XYZ diocese. And suddenly now it has more cachet. Right. You absolutely have the right to do that. If you are at all concerned, you can go back to the entity where you volunteered and say, look, I'm creating my resume. I'm talking about the work that I did for you for free. And I'd like to give myself this title. Are you comfortable with that? Right. No one's going to say no. Right. I'm glad you brought that up.
So this kind of just hit on that a little bit, is using that appropriate industry speak. And so go ahead.
These are some examples. So bake sale, no matter how you make it sound, bake sale is never going to sound serious or terribly compelling.
And this could be Booster Club also, because you're doing a lot of development.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. And I was president of Booster Club, and I still do some work for them. It's a lot of work. Mm-hmm. In fact, we talk about this all the time, even though we've both been working for a while now. Yeah. If either one of us wrote a resume, or was even in an interview, we would bring up the volunteer experience that we've done, because it really matters. Absolutely. We feel that strongly about it. Mm-hmm. Again, writing a church newsletter becomes communications consultant. Designing a team logo or a concert program for the local children's symphony becomes graphic designer. So thinking about the language that you use as it relates to your audience, and which makes the things that you've done sound the most professional.
Would it be helpful to go and look at Indeed or, just any kind of search engine that's out there, maybe even some of the job listings on the Mom Project, just to get some of the language that your audience is looking for? So looking at,
definitely,
the Mom Project
look at job postings and see how are they describing these jobs, and integrating some of that language into what you've done is a great idea.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So strategy 3 is to include scale and metrics and present them in the most compelling way. This is really, really important. Mm-hmm. So there's 3 different areas that you can use.
And these are just 3 examples of the most commonly used scales. So scale is the amount of money, the size of the client base or the size of the employee base, and the data, the size and the context of the data. So starting with money, you might have raised, for this example, $8,000 in a Booster Club bake sale, but that is not going to impress anybody at all. Even if it was $18,000, it's not going to impress anybody. So you want to look at the numbers and present them in the most compelling way. So maybe your goal was to raise $6,000 and you raised $8,000, right? So now you've exceeded. It's not the right percentage though, but whatever. I'm not a mathematician, but you get the idea. Maybe you raised 40% more than was raised last year. So if you can use those data points and say those metrics and say, I raised 40, or under my leadership, we raised 40% more in donor funds year over year, or we exceeded our fundraising targets by 50%. That will cover that success factor in a much more compelling way, because $8,000 is just not going to be impressive enough.
Well, and this is how you do it, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's what this is.
Well, this is the what you're doing, right? It's how you're presenting it. You want to present it in a way that sounds more impressive than a smaller scale.
Right.
So again, with people, you might say, I coordinated the volunteers for our annual gala. Now, anybody who's done that, we've both done that. That is so much work. But again, if it doesn't have some context, I'm not going to really see it. And volunteers don't always sound as good as employees. So you can be somewhat vague here and say, I recruited, trained, and supervised an event team of 25. I don't say volunteers. It doesn't matter if they were volunteers. I got to tell you, I ran a large sales force and I've run large volunteer teams. Sometimes it's harder to run the volunteer teams because they're not getting paid. Right. They don't have to show up.
Right.
But that's not something you want to risk saying in a resume. It might be something you bring up in an interview in the way that I just did. But again, as you're using that resume to get in the door, you want to present it in the most unobjectionable and most convincing way. And saying that you recruited, trained, and supervised an event team sounds better than coordinating volunteers.
Right.
Okay. And then data, anything to do with technology. The example we use here is we've seen a lot of our students will come through and say, well, I did the soccer team's finances. I was the bookkeeper and I got like partial tuition for my kids, whatever it is. But instead of saying, move the hockey team finances from paper to Excel or QuickBooks, you could say, converted a sports club finances and scheduling to a new cloud-based platform. So now you're throwing cloud-based in there, right? If you've ever used a Google Doc, if you've ever used an Excel worksheet in Google Drive, you've been on the cloud. We have a lot of people that say, oh, I don't know anything about cloud technology, but they're using it.
Yeah, they're right in our course.
Yeah, we're using it every day. Yeah. All right. So it's, again, looking at what you've done and writing it in a way that makes it sound the best.
Absolutely. All right. So let's just get to this next space. And this is our final thoughts about writing your best resume.
We really want to spend some time answering your questions because we know you have them. So the first thing is,
you can tell we're talking kind of fast. We've got to leave time for your question.
You have to know your brand, your audience, and your story before you can write a good resume.
Right.
Period.
Right. You can't and you shouldn't gloss over those gap years. They need to be featured in your resume.
Mm-hmm. And if they're not, if as a hiring manager, if I pick up your resume and it starts 5 years ago, I'm not going to look at it. Right. No offense, and I'm a mother of 4. Now I might, but I'm speaking in the general sense as a hiring manager. I'm not going to look at it. Presented well, however, those gap years will be an asset. They'll attract your audience and not deter them.
Right. And this is very important. And we really sold this earlier. You must believe in the value of your unpaid experiences before you can convincingly pitch that. So you have to believe it.
So
first.
True. And you need to use industry relevant language to present the unpaid experience. And just think about the context, the scale, and the metrics, those things we talked about, the language that you're using, how you present the size of the project, and then the way you present your outcomes or your results through metrics. Oh, and read that last one. I want you to read that one. I already said that one. Read it again because they can't hear it too many times.
Okay. All right. And never, ever apologize for taking time off to care for your family.
Mm-hmm.
Never.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to do that now, I promise.
So let's talk about where to go from here. So what we're going to be doing, as we mentioned, is we're going to be available for questions for a good, I don't know how much time we have, probably 20 or 30 minutes. Yeah. So if you feel right now you're ready to just dive in, this was just what you needed to get you over the edge. We'll be providing shortly after this session a resume checklist that's specifically for people with gapped resumes. And it's going to take you through everything down to like what font you should use. And it's a checklist so you can use this as your guide to create your resume, but also as the checklist to make sure that you haven't left anything uncovered.
Right. So you might feel that you need a little more help. And actually this, we're really excited because we're launching this new course that really is because of a lot of our mom project webinars. We get these questions all the time. We've been asked to create something that is more of a spotlight course that just looks at the resume gap. And so we created what's called the Resume Gap Lab. It is a step-by-step guide that walks you through, it's a course that walks you through how to fill that gap on your resume and teaches you the art of doing that, because it really is an art. It makes it easy. And we break it down so that it is something that you can absolutely accomplish. So a lot of the things that we went over in today's webinar are really like
they're further elaborated.
Yeah, just there's more support for you to be able to
we
do that.
We have templates, so you can just fill in the blanks and not worry about.
And
a gallery that shows you. I think Verna's is in there, the one we mentioned.
Yeah.
And one example we didn't give that I want to give before we go on, and that's Roseanne.
Yeah.
So Roseanne took our 10-week career relaunch course, as many students for the Mom Project end up doing. It's only offered 3 times a year by application. And in the email that you'll get a link to kind of get some more information about that. It really takes you from, I have no idea what I even want to do or what I can do, all the way through, I know how to go negotiate and get a big signing bonus kind of thing. It's the full complete comprehensive process. And Roseanne was really feeling down when we started working on resume because she was a single mom of 2, what did you call them? Micro preemies?
Yeah, micro preemies.
So 2 twins that were born very early, required a lot of extra help for her early on and continuing on through high school because one of them had some learning disabilities. And so as a single mom, she was trying to just keep everybody afloat, was not able to really volunteer at all in terms of the examples that we gave. However, when we started again talking about, she was writing down what she did. She lived in Chicago and she did a lot of advocacy. And now originally the advocacy was for her own children, one with severe learning disabilities, one with mild ones. But what happened was her work ended up becoming the platform for other families to get the support that their children needed. So she very boldly on her resume put down for the last 18 years, or not 18, I guess 13 years since her children started school. It says, I think it said special education advocate, comma, Chicago public schools. And then she talked about what she did. and what the outcomes were. And nowhere did it say, I had 2 children, they were born early, they have learning disabilities. I was just being a good mom trying to get their needs met through services, because what she did was so much bigger. The postscript to that is that she just started in September with a major, very well-funded company in California, Northern California, that handles transport. Talk about supply chain problems. Her company's working on that because they have all kinds of different tools that they're using to accelerate and facilitate the transport of products throughout the world. And she called us up, wrote to us on the first day. She said, I just got a job. I'm leading a team, and the entire average age of the team is 30. And she said, I am 50. I am no digital tools, and they didn't even care.
Yeah.
Okay. So really important for you guys to know that the work that you do, if you believe in it yourself and you present it well, will help you get that next job.
Yeah.
Right.
If you can survive being a mom of micro preemies, then
you can pretty much do
that's
anything.
who I want working on.
Exactly.
The issues that are happening right now in
Exactly.
our transport world. Okay.
All
So
right. Just stop the share. I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah. We want to hear your questions. I think Ariana was capturing some of those for us. And let's go. We have 25 minutes.
Yeah, ladies, thank you. This was very helpful information. It's definitely resonated with many of our viewers today. The chat is on fire.
Oh, good.
Which is a great thing. And we'll get to some of you all in the chat just momentarily, but we did want to extend this opportunity for those who were unable to join us today to address their questions as well. And so we'll pivot shortly to the live chat in just a few minutes here, but let's start off with those who submitted questions through our email. And the first question I have for you today is, what technologies are absolutely essential for relaunching into the workforce besides Microsoft Office tools? Should candidates be familiar with Slack, social media, etc.?
Yeah, it really depends on your field.
Right.
So yesterday we had a graduate call, and Terry from Redwood City is a computer programmer.
Right.
So, she's been out for, I think, 14 years. She's got to learn JavaScript. She's got to learn CSS. Roseanne, the other example we gave you, who works in logistics, didn't really need to know much. They were pretty open. What we find is that what helps is if you have a basic foundation of some tools, which I'll mention in a second, it builds your confidence so that you feel better going in there.
Yes.
If you have a facility with Microsoft Office, Word, Excel, PowerPoint. Excel, if you're not in finance, all you need to be able to do is work on a spreadsheet. You don't have to be able to create pivot tables or even necessarily create your own spreadsheet, but that you understand how to put things in a column, how to calculate or tally those columns, how to move things around. Word, how to create a Word document. PowerPoint, how to create a slide. Do you need to be able to make funny, transitions, or no, just the basics. You will feel better. You will feel better if you have used Google Docs.
Google Suite.
But Google Drive, I think is what you say. On the Google Drive, it's basically Microsoft Office in the cloud. Slightly different, but you'll feel better if you've created a couple of documents on the drive and shared them with other people. And it's something you can do at home with your spouse and your kids. You don't have to do it in a business setting.
We've actually, in our course that we teach, our flagship course that we teach 3 times a year, we've actually implemented Slack as the way that we speak to each other, and we talk and collaborate when we're not meeting in the actual virtual sessions. That has been a game changer for our graduates, because most companies are using that or some form
something
of
like that or Google Meet,
and they know how, so they, again, it's a confidence builder. I have an understanding of it, so it's not so difficult when they're having to learn a new system in their company. And
you don't have to go and chase each one.
No.
If you can say, I know how to use cloud-based applications, that would be Google Drive, and you can do that with your kids. I know how to use Slack.
Slack, you could do, especially if you're someone who's doing, or if you're somebody who is working in the, the volunteer space, maybe that committee or that group that you work on, just push them onto Slack, check it out yourself. It's
Yeah.
something that you could learn
Yeah.
and practice and get good at.
And then you're comfortable saying, I know how to work in the asynchronous sync space for communications.
Yeah. Zoom, we all know now.
Zoom. Yeah. So
Or
that would be my
Teams.
answer. But to your point earlier, for the person who asked the question, if they are in a highly technical field where there's
Yes.
some more tools are required, that would be another opportunity to look at job postings and see what skills are they saying are required.
Right.
I will tell you, we have never, and we've been running our course for 3 years, and I've been, combined working the space for 30, ever had someone not get a job because their tech skills weren't there unless they were working as a technical provider.
Person. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I rolled them out already.
Nice. Awesome answers, and definitely agree that those are some of the best platforms that most those of us who are working use on a regular basis. Yeah, it totally makes sense. The next question here is how to transfer skills onto a resume when you perform a job function, but didn't really hold the title that was corresponding with the functions of the job.
Right. So we kind of answered that in the volunteer realm. You can call yourself whatever you want. We have had many people who have had jobs and have changed their names because the titles have changed. Yeah. So 10 years ago, you might have been the director of the MIS department. Well, nobody, under 35 is going to know what that means. Mm-hmm. So you can change it to, IT director, right? It is, I know some people are, especially women, are so afraid to do these kinds of things because they feel dishonest. If you are writing a title that is a good reflection of the work that you've done or you did, don't feel bad about it. Put it down, feel confident about it. And I explained earlier, if it was something you did recently in a volunteer role, if you really want to, you could always ask permission.
Right.
But it's important for you that the titles on your resume reflect the work that you did.
Right.
Here's another thing about titles. On the top of your resume, and at the top of your LinkedIn profile, you should have titles. The titles can be somewhat aspirational. So you might not be, Alina's a good example. Alina says HR professional. She's been kind of an HR professional, unpaid, working for her husband's company. She's got some certification, but we had to really push her to call herself that because she didn't feel like, since she hadn't had the job in a corporate setting, she earned it. If you've done the work, give yourself the title. If you are pushing yourself towards something new and you want to put the title at the top of your resume, be a little aspirational there. You can reach.
Yeah.
Perfect. This next question is interesting. I don't think we've ever had this question before with any of our master classes, but
okay.
This is the one. I like to add the project management of motherhood to my resume. For example, Chief Operating Officer of Domestic Affairs. I just love that. Is that considered good humor, or is it just poor taste to do that?
Okay, so our thoughts. So first of all, let's just say this first.
We get it.
We understand it. Yes, you are CEO, chief. You are all of those things. Yeah. And yes, kudos to all of that. And we have deep respect for it. We live our own versions of it. But in this arena, we talked a little bit earlier about using that professional language. And also that can be that read as a little tongue in cheek. And you want to come across as serious. As serious and professional. When, if you want to, drop that maybe on an interview jokingly or something like that, that's a different story. Once they meet you and they see, if your personality speaks to that, maybe.
But the risk always is that very often the first eyes on your resume is someone who's very young.
Yeah.
And they're not there yet. And one of the stories I teach in our course is that I actually overlooked a really good candidate when I was 27 or 28, didn't have kids yet, because, and it's partly on her because she didn't do a good enough job of explaining to me what she did during her 10-year break. But I was just like, oh, what the heck does she know?
Right.
And that's terrible, but I didn't know. I wasn't unkind. I didn't know. So putting something like that on there, I think creates more opportunity for a negative response than a positive. And that's always kind of our benchmark. If there's more risk to go negative, then you don't do it.
Right.
And I would bet that person also has, the person who wrote the question, has other things that she can mine from in her experience or mine through from her experience that will matter more.
And use some of those strategies that we talked about today. To do that. Yeah.
Well said from both of you. All Are there any buzzwords recruiters or hiring managers are looking for going into next year? So are there any trends that you guys are noticing that would be best beneficial to include on a resume?
So the problem with buzzwords is it gets kind of close to keywords too. I mean, what you're really looking for is authentic language.
Yes.
So a lot of people are using, like, I see servant leadership a lot. I mean, I think that, like, oh, really? Give me a break. I mean, they're like, everybody's throwing those things in.
And then it lasts for a short, finite period of time.
And then it's kind of lost its cachet.
Right. You want your resume to be updated,
but authentic.
Authentic.
So really the language, the best way to get good language on your resume is to talk to other people,
Yep.
find out how they describe you and borrow some of that.
Yes.
So that instead of saying I'm detail oriented, we had one woman who came from the Mom Project also, and hers said her senior executive that she reported to, she was a chief of staff, said that she handled the multitude of challenges in his workplace with executive grace and calm.
I mean, like, such
it was just a beautiful
soundbite.
phrase, and we stuck it right in there.
Yeah.
So we can tell you what they are looking for in terms of overall skills. People are looking for the more than other than the requisite skills for the position. They're looking for people who are agile because things are changing very quickly.
And who's more agile than a mom?
Exactly. Mhm. They're looking for people who have the ability and the interest in learning more. They're looking for people who are motivated not by just moving up, but are motivated by expanding their skills. So the career ladder that many of us entered our careers on has been replaced by a career lattice. And this is really being driven a lot by the millennials, but we have so much in common with the millennials as moms. So it's more looking for opportunities, maybe to move the career up, down a little bit, sideways, all in service of growing. So more growth than accumulation of titles. So agility, and then also collaboration. So organizations are much flatter now. I mean, you don't see the old org chart where it starts here and goes up to this one person. So they really need people who can work collaboratively with lots of different personalities. And again,
Who does that
better than a mom?
Who does that better, and who's teaching the world to do it? I mean, moms.
Love it. And just to pivot over into our live chat here, I see that there were plenty of questions, some that you guys have already answered. So thank you in advance. But there is a question or two as it pertains to one, someone had traveled internationally or moved their family internationally. They weren't working. How do you capture that? They're back in the States. How does one do that to just ensure that they're capturing that they were out of the country and now they're re-entered? Is there a best practice for those who may have had similar experiences?
Yeah. We actually have a program that we run in partnership with 4Block, which is a veteran career readiness program. We run a military spouse program for them. So they're global. Yeah, and actually, if any of the women listening are military spouses, they should hop on the 4Block website or go to our website, which is www.preparetolaunch.com, where we have a link to 4Block, because we do offer that 10-week career readiness program, and it's free to military spouses there. But so we have a lot of experiences of people who not only move overseas, but move frequently.
Right.
So the same rules apply. If you have done volunteer work or part-time work or anything during that time, you would capture it there. And you want to put where you've lived. Having global experience would have been something I added to that last question, is very important, because the world of work is becoming much more integrated. We're not really siloed geographically like we used to be because of things like Zoom. So that would be a great thing to mention. It would be a great thing to mention in your opening statement that you've lived in multiple countries and you've experienced different cultures. That would be a plus, whether or not you've worked in those cultures, but just the fact that you've been exposed to them.
Right.
Certainly, how many students do we have that we find out, like on the last day of the course, they speak 3 languages and it's never on their resume?
It is the truth. It's
true. Crazy.
We're just like, wait a second, you speak 4 different languages? Like, that should be something that is in that profile.
Like the first sentence,
right
trilingual, boom. So if you have any language or cultural experiences, you want to mention them. But the rules apply. So if the person who asked that question has not been able to do any work while they're abroad, but they maybe have done some volunteer work, just present it the same way, but be sure to talk about the fact that you've done it as an expat and where you've been.
Exactly.
Okay.
Nice. There is a couple more questions coming in. The one that I recently captured here is, how do I add life experiences without making it sound fluffy? Examples of like bookkeeping and bank management, personal social media accounts, and so forth. What's the best practice for that?
So if those skills have been acquired and practiced in the context of your family, they just don't belong, unfortunately. That will not be valued as a hiring manager, because that is something we all do. We all manage our bank accounts. We all manage our grocery account. We all do those kinds of things. However, and this is an example we forgot to bring up, we have a lot of students who have flipped homes, or have done the fixer-upper or didn't manage a rental property as an Airbnb. That counts.
That does.
You call that property management or general contracting. Those are things that can matter. But the day-to-day activity of running a household, unfortunately,
paying your own family bills, things like that, that doesn't fit. But if you were doing the books for your spouse's company, then that does fit. Or
a rental property. The only time I think it could count is if you are, let's say, a guardian or the legal guardian, or you have the signature authority for a disabled person or an elderly parent, or you are acting as an what's it called when you're the
by proxy?
No, whatever. I'm having real word
problems
today.
I think
executor, the executor of an estate. Those things could belong on there. But for the day to day, but I promise you, the woman that wrote that question, she's done other stuff. She's just got to sit down and start thinking and writing. And you said this, talk to your friends. Talk to your friends, talk to people that you volunteered with, talk to people that know you really well, and tell them, I'm mining for work that I've done in these opt-out years and work that could translate to being work that is valued in the workplace. So that's the
great feedback on that, because I know that was a question that was coming up in various versions here in the chat. So thanks for that. Another good one here. How would you frame your experience or capture your experience in your resume if you've been homeschooling your child or children? Most moms, many of us in our community had to do that indefinitely almost when the pandemic started. So how do you capture that in a professional manner that will resonate with recruiters and hiring managers?
That's it. We have Julyn. That's a challenging one. But as we said in that earlier slide, if you've only done it during COVID, it requires no explanation. I've been home. I mean, you'd write it more professionally, but basically home caring for a family during COVID.
And I also think it's important, the audience that you're targeting here, right? That's also very important to determine, like, would that even matter to the audience that I'm targeting?
Well, maybe not, but for the 2-year COVID gap, just to account for it. Now we had Julyn. Julyn was a student of ours who had 2 children on the autism spectrum, and she homeschooled them for 18 years. And she was so cute. She came on the first call. She goes, look, I don't want to, have people envision what they envision when they think homeschool, because people all have their biases. She said, this is what I did. I can't really say I did anything else because it was a full-time job. But when we started talking to her and we looked at what she did, she ended up becoming a provider of educational materials and curriculum for people outside of her family. She was lobbying to have homeschool experiences better validated and are valued at the state capitol. Now, the person who wrote the question may not have done that, but if you focus on the things that you did, you could say that you were part of a homeschool association and that you developed curriculum and that you, hosted events and if you did any type of advocacy work, you did advocacy work. You want to focus less on, I taught my kids, and more on the structure of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And when you're talking about, like, so maybe you had a child with special needs and you had to provide accommodations for them. So you can use that language as well in you provided accommodations for individuals learning and understanding.
Right. So I'm glad that question came up, because we do get more and more students.
And a lot of us did it. We did it for, an extended period of time, and it was not easy.
So it makes us really respect the people who make that choice to do it long term.
Yes, absolutely.
For sure.
Perfect. we can have more time for about maybe 3 more questions here. The next one from very complex here. I think there's a little bit of everything in this one. Speaking of her and her husband, relocated 4 years ago due to her husband's work. I couldn't work or volunteer due to visa restrictions. They had a baby with no or limited support or network, and of course, COVID. So she hasn't done anything else. What would be the best recommendation for this mom?
Yeah. So I would focus on, in that case, if there's really nothing to draw from, and certainly not to say that she wasn't busy. She was very busy.
Right.
And the challenge here would be, does it belong in the resume or does it belong in the cover letter? And she'd probably have to make that decision, because as a narrative, it seems to play out better on a cover letter. But with the way she explained it was well done. It was brief and clear. Relocated due to a corporate relocation. During that time, had a child. But I think could focus on the logistics of the move, coordinated an international move while raising a family. And if there was anything else you could put in there, let's say she kept up with her licensure, or she kept up with her networks, or, somehow, sometimes you have to really dig deep.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say she's a finance professional and maybe she was managing a small portfolio of investments. So you could talk about that.
Yeah, we find that often that our students, they'll start talking and they're like, well, I really didn't do much.
I played the stock market and
then all of a sudden it was like, oh no, this was, you know, like a large, scale portfolio that happened when one of our mom project students came and that was something Tanya.
It was Tanya, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So I think I want to make sure she's a good answer moving forward. And let me just back up, and we should have said this too. Just remember that you have only a 10% chance of ever even getting an interview by applying anywhere online. Even on the Mom Project, I think Katie said it's 1% get placed. I mean, it's thousands and thousands and thousands of people for hundreds and hundreds of jobs, regardless of where you go. So your chances on the Mom Project are better because you've got someone who's already interested in hiring a mom.
Right.
So you don't have to worry about that hurdle. But on the Mom Project, the hurdle is so many people, right? You've got double that when you're on the regular job market, because you have an unconventional resume, an audience that doesn't really care, or certainly hasn't volunteered to say, I'm open to hiring moms with career gaps.
Algorithm that doesn't understand your
right,
resume.
And that too. So the gap matters a lot in helping you understand how to talk about it.
Yes.
It matters when your resume gets handed off to someone that it makes some sense. But for the most part, your resumes to work are going to be read by a human. So it's not as important that it be perfectly written. It can be a little gray. You just need to connect those dots. So I want to read further. So I want to bring you in. So in your case, for this particular student, if there's nothing else you can draw from, I might just put down, from 2017 to present, coordinated an overseas move, managed an investment portfolio, and provided caregiving responsibilities for family. Keep it short, and then you can elaborate more in your resume. In your cover letter.
And because it takes 6 to 9 months to get a job, usually when you apply. So in that time, if you have support now, if you have enough support and you've been in the country long enough, really think about the volunteer opportunities that you could take on to help fill that gap time and, get those things on your resume. So being a little strategic about where you are looking to spend your time, whether it be in your church or somewhere in your actual, in your hometown that you're living in. Think about taking on things now that could help fill that gap. And
it's great. And we call it strategic volunteerism. It's picking those jobs where you're going to spend your time that are going to maybe give you an opportunity to learn a new skill, like the example you gave for Slack, or further develop the skills that you have. Important.
And our final question here is, how do you speak about your mom pause or career gap in an interview? So let's say you pass everything about the hiring process to start, and you make it into the interview stage, and it's just someone's time to speak on that.
Yeah.
So funny. so funny because the Mom Project, we get the gap question, and then we always get, then how do I talk about my gap?
Yeah.
So maybe that's our next question.
So 2 words, boldly and briefly.
Mhm.
So, and I want to say this, I'm going to forget before I answer that question, one other thing, just to build on what you said before, because Kelly talked about how for the woman who's overseas, if she's not going to be looking imminently till she moves back, she wants to do some volunteer stuff to fill that gap. If your gap is long, really long, but it's in the middle of your resume, it doesn't matter as much. So for example, if we like was it Tanya? I forget who it was, who had a long gap and then got a job for a couple of years, and she came into the course because she was looking to change.
That was Tanya.
But it doesn't matter so much. It comes down to this. If I'm the hiring manager, I don't necessarily want to be the first one who hires you after a 15-year gap. I need a little more work. But if you took the 15-year gap 5 years ago, and for 5 years you've been working for my competitor, I'm fine with that. So if you have something current on your resume, it just makes that a much easier transition.
Right.
So back to how do you talk about it in an interview, boldly and briefly. No apology, but you don't want to spend a lot of time in that realm. That's not what you're interested in.
Right.
So one strategy would be because a very common question you're going to get is, so Kelly, tell me about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, oh my God, I prepared all these behavioral questions and now like, where do I even go? Right. So our big belief is you own it.
Yeah.
Well, you can probably see from my resume that I took a career break. I was working at IBM. Mm-hmm. And, I had an opportunity to stay home and raise my family. It was and make sure you say this, even if it isn't necessarily true, it was a really big decision for me. I loved my work, mm-hmm. but for my family, it made more sense for one of us to stay home. And I made that choice. I'm so excited to get back to work. During that time that I've been home, however, you can see all the things that I've done. So I took the fact that I was an account manager, which was coordinating resources, managing logistics, managing a team of people, a lot of leadership, a lot of communications. And I made sure that the volunteer work and the small gigs that I took on during those 10 years I was home all played to my strengths, helped develop my strengths.
Right.
That's how you talk about your gap. It's quick, it's short, and it brings them right back to, okay, this is why I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
Love that. Just keep it short, concise, make sure it's clear, and it will resonate.
I think the other thing is to speak about it confidently.
Yeah,
just like you're like direct but confident that you believe it. And I think it goes back to what we said at the very beginning. You have to believe this first. You have to believe that work that happened in those opt-out years is valuable. Mm-hmm. You have to believe that first yourself.
And we do.
We do.
And 100%. All the employers that we see and all the employers that Mom Project sees. And so the Mom Project ones, they already believe it. Yeah. But we see ones that aren't on the Mom Project that you can't even believe that they would believe it. And they do.
They do. Yeah.
Yes. It's all truthful information here. These are the facts. So thank you, Susan and Kelly, for closing us out for the end of the year with these practical.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers. I have some cheers. I reached for my closest coffee mug, but it's just been a pleasure. The community thanks you. We appreciate you. I want to also give you guys this time to quickly shout out some links, how people can find you. I know, guys, we will have a post follow-up email soon that includes this presentation and the materials that you guys mentioned earlier in this on this webinar in the email. So bear with us, you all who are watching. But I do want to give you guys the time to quickly share how they can find you on social and so forth.
Sure. Yeah. So most importantly, you can go to our website. Our website has everything that we offer and a ton of free content, especially those of you who are in that return to work journey. It's www.preparetolaunch.com. And
we're on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn. We also have a YouTube channel. We just did our first YouTubes this week. So
you can find us on YouTube. That's Prepare to Launch You. On Instagram, we are Prepare
to the number 2 Launch You.
Launch You.
And same with Facebook.
Yeah.
And then we're also on LinkedIn. And we would love to connect. We love hearing from Mom Project members. We love hearing, we get the questions a lot. We also like to hear where you end up.
Oh, yeah.
So make sure that if anything we've given to you today or that you use later is helpful, let us know.
Yes.
I'd like to know that too.
Yes, for sure.
All right.
Well,
And one other thing, Jennifer, if they have any ideas for future sessions they'd like us to do, because we'll be looking at doing something in the second quarter, that would be helpful to know too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, great. And thank you for sharing that. That's definitely something for those of you who are new to the Mom Project and new to watching our masterclass today. Please join a talent profile with us at the Mom Project. We have plenty of family-friendly employers who are ready to connect and work with you. These resources here that Susan and Kelly shared today will also be available. We have plenty of resources on our themomproject.com site through our study and so forth. So please take advantage of these resources as they're available to you. And we'll just wrap it up here. But thank you both. We hope you all have a wonderful holiday season. And we look forward to starting over in the new year.
We're here for you. Thanks, Jennifer.
Thanks,
Thank
Jennifer.
you, Ariana. And best wishes, everybody. Thanks.
Take care.